Hello everybody, welcome to this wonderful video. So today we are going through how to paint a very classic Australian landscape. So hopefully you've all had a really good week, and I should say a really good day. It's lovely to be able to do this on a Friday, and especially at the new time of 4:30 where it's a little bit more relaxed. Hopefully, you're back from work, or your kids are back home if you had to go and pick them up, all that stuff. So now you can relax and unwind and get ready to do some nice peaceful painting with me. So if you've just joined in, big welcome. My name's Teresa Small and I am Chroma's resident artist in Australia. And today I'm going to be sharing you all my sort of go-to tips when it comes to painting a beautiful landscape. Landscapes have to be one of my favourite sort of subjects. In my own art practice, I paint a lot of them. So it's my pleasure to do this with you today. Now, before I get started as well, I'd just like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land. I'm currently sitting on Gadigal country, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and future. All right, so with that in mind, let's get into some painting. So what we're going to be using today are these fantastic brand new Jo Sonja acrylics. Now, I should rephrase that. The paints are not brand new, but the set is. And isn't it beautiful? This packaging is actually, this set is just about to launch in Australia. Now, I have to sort of say I'm sorry to anyone who's not in Australia or New Zealand, because at the moment, it is just for us Aussies and of course New Zealand, but we're sort of, we're kind of cousins anyway. Anyway, so this lovely Jo Sonja set, it's 24 tube set, that's what I'm going to be using today. Although if this set is not available in your country and you'd like to paint along, then just keep an ear out for what colours I'm using, and just be sure to go and make sure that you have those Jo Sonja colours at the ready. You can also have a look into our comments section as well. So if you'd like to pick up the set or have a little bit more info about it, you can actually head there. And now, speaking of the comments and everything else, because this is a live session today, I want you to feel very, comfortable in, commenting, saying hello, let us know what you're up to, or more importantly too, if you have any questions about anything that I'm going through, as far as techniques or just general questions about paint, just pop it in the comments section and we'll answer. So awesome. So with that in mind, let's get some paints out. So I'm going to open up this lovely tube, and not this tube, this packet. You can tell it's Friday because I'm starting to run over my words a little bit. Alrighty, so inside here you can see there is a gorgeous variety of colours and just a little, little handout of bits and pieces to keep in mind, or little tips as far as what kind of surfaces and design you can use this for. Alright, so we've got a lot of colours at our disposal. The first colours we're going to be using is ultramarine blue and titanium white. There we go, had to go searching for them. This is also a really good gift set, so if you have anybody and it's coming up to Christmas time, I'd recommend sort of asking Santa for it, as to say. Alrighty, so ultramarine blue, titanium white, aren't they cute? Let's pop those on the palette. I'm going to put all of these colours aside now. We'll get back into those a little bit later. Alright, so on my palette here, I always like to arrange my colours in a neat little row across the top of my canvas. So here we go, and they're sealed, that's good. Nice and sealed for freshness and everything else. Wow, I just got paint on my fingers. Okay, here we go. Nice amount of our ultramarine blue. You can see these paints have a very beautiful consistency to them. They're sort of not too thin and not too thick. I feel like there's going to be a little bit of unsealing these as I go today, so you'll just have to bear with me. Alright, so we need about twice as much titanium white as we have out of the ultramarine blue. So you can see here just the sizes of each of these, so twice as much of the white as the blue. Now the first step here is super easy. All we have to do is take a nice large brush. I'm using a flat brush today, and you're just going to use some plain white. Load that quite heavily into your brush. So I am going to be flipping the brush over each time I pick it up. And look, this brush, it's had a good life. So There we go. You can just see how much paint is on there. So actually, absolutely, like just heaps of it. Okay, so first thing to do, let's put a nice stripe of white across our imagined horizon line. Now, I'm just going to bring in what we're painting today. So here's the little, what I prepared earlier. So in this painting, you can see that the horizon line is quite high. In fact, it's about 2/3 the height of the canvas. So in that in mind, I'm going to put that back, and we're going to create a nice horizontal line of plain titanium white. I'm just going to take that all across the edge of the canvas. Wonderful. Now, as far as the width of that line, because it's a little bit hard to see how wide it is, because obviously white paint, white canvas, but it's about 2 inches thick, so about yay big. Okay, once we've got our wonderful titanium white line across our horizon line, let's now make a very, very, very light blue colour. So the way that I like to sort of limit the total quantity of paint or new colour mixing in is to actually use my paintbrush on a little bit of an angle. So you can see here how that blue is just on the very corner of my brush. And the other thing that you can do is you can actually unload that colour just to the edge of, you know, the colour you're about to mix it in. And it's all about limiting the total amount of paint that goes into, you know, your mix. And that's really important when you're doing things that you want to be, you know, realistic, because it's incredible how just a small little touch of colour can have such a big effect on the result of the mix. And I'm sure if you've attempted any kind of painting before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And look, if your paint does react in that way, it actually is a good sign of quality, because it means that your paint is quite highly pigmented. Okay, so I have an ultra light blue. In fact, it's so light, it's almost like a tinted white. And thinking of it like a tinted white is a good mindset to have, because it gives you a good idea of just how light it's going to be. Now with this sky, because this is where we're working at the moment, by the way, we're going straight into the sky, it's important to work quite quickly, and also to ensure that all the colours that you're sort of wanting to blend together are wet. So I'm going to be placing my very, very light blue half over the wet titanium white and half over my dried canvas. I'm going to take a nice long horizontal stroke, and I'm going to repeat it going in the opposite direction. And I'm actually going to repeat that same mark back and forward about 4 or 5 times. And as I repeat it, I'm noticing that the two are just becoming one, right? They're sort of blending beautifully together. Now I'll just show you, I'll bring it up nice and close so you can see how that's sort of happening. Now with the remainder of that light blue, I'm going to do that same step again. So I'm going to take, I haven't changed the colour by the way, I'm taking the same light blue and I'm placing it half over the dried canvas, half over the wet paint, and then I'm going to repeat that same brush stroke about 4 or 5 times in very long consistent sort of marks from one edge of the canvas all the way to the other. Now if you're following along and you think, oh, this is nice, but I'm getting a bit of a line between my colours, which is, you know, it's a little bit unavoidable when you're blending. So once you've repeated the same section about 4 or 5 times, we're going to bring our brush, or we'll sort of move our brush down by a fraction. So just a little tiny bit down, and then we're going to repeat the same long horizontal brush stroke repetitively at that height. And then we're going to step down and once more and repeat that same line. Blending is a very, you know, soothing process. It's also a very, you know, almost aerobic process, especially when you're blending a large canvas. Okay, so now we've got a nice soft gradient with lovely blend of those colours. So now right at the top edge of our canvas, we can afford to add in a little bit of a stronger blue. So I'm going to take a little tiny bit more from the ultramarine that I've put on the side here, my little unloaded section, because I only want this to be just a tint darker. I don't think that's the right description, calling it a tint, a shade. There we go, a shade darker than what we've been using previously. The other thing to keep in mind when you're blending, you know, things and you want them to be really subtle and even, your changes of colour need to be very gradual. You don't want to have too many, you know, big jumps in difference of colour, or it's going to be more difficult to blend. All right, so for this one, we're going to be doing the same kind of thing that we've been painting on so far. So half over the previous wet colour, half over the dried canvas, and we're just going to repeat that stroke, and I'm just going to make sure that goes all the way up to the top of the canvas too. Why not? So once I've repeated that about 4 or 5 times, so I'm just realising a bit out the side there, then I'm going to drop the paintbrush down just a little step, repeat the stroke to left, to right, to left, to right, until it's all blended. There we go. And what you should have on your canvas is a lovely little sort of very, very, very gradual blend from the white at your horizon line all the way up into sort of a nice light blue. But as you have this fade, it should be, seamless, And the way that you get that seamless is to ensure that each new colour that you place on is only ever so slightly different to the previous, and your colours need to be wet, and you need to ensure that you have long brush marks from, you're keeping your brush engaged with your canvas all the way from the left all the way to the right, because if you do little tiny choppy marks, you're going to see your marks on your canvas. So alrighty, and if you've just joined us today as well, big welcome. So my name's Teresa, and I will be going through all of these little tips on how to paint a lovely river landscape scene. It's a very classic Australian landscape, which is right up my alley. Alright, so with that in mind, I'm using the same light blue that I've used up the top, and what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to repeat the blue blend that we've just done from the sky, from light to slightly darker, but also very light, sort of in reverse down the bottom of the canvas. So I'm going to take the blue that I've used from the top of the painting now. I'm going to place that underneath the white line, that white edge that we've blacked in, and I'm doing those long brush strokes from one side of the canvas to the other. There is a little bit of a line between them, and that's okay. It doesn't have to actually be completely blended here between these two. But this is the top sky colour, right? Okay, so I've made that quite wide actually. That is, gosh, about half the width of the sky. So that's sort of nice to know that that's there, Alrighty, so the next thing that we're going to be doing here is we're actually going to introduce a new colour. So I keep rolling up my sleeves. I'm wearing this big baggy sleeved thing today. I thought, yeah, I'm going to wear orange. It's going to be really nice and bright. And then I thought, that practicality of baggy sleeves and painting. Alrighty, so the colour we're adding into our mix is some Phthalo Blue. So just as a just to go over what I've currently been using, this is very important if you've just joined in today. So currently I've been using titanium white and ultramarine blue, and now we're introducing the Phthalo Blue. Now I did this sort of special little dance because Phthalo Blue is a very rich, very cool blue, and it is responsible for, teals and turquoises, like electric blues. It's a very punchy blue, and it's the blue that we're going to be incorporating in our water here. So with that in mind, let's have a look back at our palette here. So I've got a nice blob of ultramarine. I did mention there'd be a lot of unsealing, so let me just get my fingernail under here and unseal it. And if you have joined us today as well, just recently, big welcome. With this session, you're welcome to paint along, although I will warn you, I go at a fast pace. Or you can sort of just watch and ask questions about the painting process as well. And if you've just joined and thought, oh gosh, I'd really like to learn how Teresa just blended that sky like that, then you can subscribe to our newsletter. And this video will be sent out to you as well as a step-by-step blog of this project. So I'm going to be getting, really getting everybody to get into painting the river landscapes, because you know what, it's not much that's more peaceful than a nice river landscape. Okay, so I'm just re-putting out a little bit of the titanium white as well because I'd run out of it. I used so much previously. All right, So what we're going to be doing here, so let's say we've got my nice mix of light blue. The mix here is a mixture of ultramarine and titanium white. So I'm going to be using a little tiny bit, and again I'm using the corner of my brush, a little bit of phthalo blue. And wow, you can see just like already how like punchy that is, right? In fact, when I was thinking, what I was talking about with how to get nice blends and how the difference of colors need to be really gradual, right? Well, if I put this color next to this one, it's actually quite different in tone, like, oh, in value, my apologies. It's quite a bit dark. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and I'm going to lighten it up so it's not too dissimilar to what I had, right? Because again, we want these differences, or we want these little steps to be quite gradual, quite gentle, so it's not going to, jump out at us too much. Alrighty, so with our slightly more gentle phthalo mix, I'm going to be placing this half over the wet paint, half over the dry canvas. Well, I probably didn't have enough paint on my brush there. And we're just going to repeat that brush stroke about 4 or 5 times. And if you have a little line that's occurring in your picture, you can start to very gradually step upwards. But the trick with this soft blending is lots of repetition. You're going to be working out your arm muscles today. All right, so I've placed that on just underneath, and now I'm going to be darkening the color again. So this time I'm going to be adding in a bit of the phthalo blue, but also a little bit of the ultramarine blue. So it's a mix of both of them. And I'm going to add just enough white so it's a little bit darker than what I've previously had, but again, not too much darker. I want those gradual changes to be just that, very gradual. All right, so half over the dry canvas, half over the previous wet paint, consistent horizontal marks, keeping your paintbrush engaged with your canvas all the way from the left side to the right side, back and forward and back and forward. At least 4 times. It's, you can't do this too many times, right? The only thing that'll happen if you, paint too many times on the same area like this is that your picture is going to be incredibly well blended, so it's not a bad thing. Now here you can see there's a little bit of a line between 2 of these, so I'm going to just, for my next mark, I'm going to bring my paintbrush starting a little bit higher, and then repeat that same mark back and forward. It's like magic, and then all of a sudden there's this beautiful gradual blend. Seamless, you want it to be totally, I don't know, perfect? I don't know. Actually, no, not perfect. Just, let's say seamless. You want to have no evidence of different colours being, lines. You don't want any stripes, right? We're avoiding stripes. All right, and now I'm going to be darkening the colour again. So a little bit of phthalo blue, a little bit of ultramarine blue. Not as much white this time, maybe just a little touch of white. It's going to get quite strong, this colour, really quite intense now, which is good. You want this to be intense. Now, I haven't washed my brush once yet, right? And because of that, it's not a bad thing, by the way, but all of that previous colour is starting to get pushed up in the fire of the brush. So as I'm mixing, I'm just going to press my brush on the side to push down any paint that's sitting high up in the fire, and then I'm going to mix that in to what I have. This just helps later on. So if I'm, placing on the paint with a heavy pressure and all of a sudden I get some colour I didn't want in there, it sort of just helps sort of safeguard that. All right, again, half over the wet paint, half over the dried canvas. Repeat that. Going to be thinking about that line of that, half over the dry canvas, half over the wet paint in your sleep. I'm going to be repeating it so much. There we go, and I'm just sort of gently working that upwards. Da-da-da. Lovely. Oh, there's a little bit of a line there that I can see. Don't want any lines in this. I want this to be soft blending with no evidence of line. All right, so pretty much every single step down the canvas you go, the darker your colour is going to be. Now, I'm sort of into almost the last section here. So in this part, I'm not going to be adding any white. It's just equal parts ultramarine blue and Phthalo Blue. Equal parts, off it goes. Oh wow, that's nice and strong, isn't it? And I'm just going to fill in that whole bottom section. Taking note to make sure that all of the canvas is really evenly covered. Alright, so I've covered that, and now I'm just going to very slowly work my way a little bit higher so I can get those colours to start to blend right in together. Noticing if there's any lines going on here, I really want to just really, repeat this same horizontal brush mark. Like I said, it's very aerobic when you get into blending. You really work those muscles. All right, I'm happy with that. I'm going to put my brush in the water now. Ta-da! So, we have just done a huge amount of blending, and I mean, this could be a river, it could be the ocean. In fact, this layer, this sort of step, you could use as the base for a whole variety of different scenes in the landscape. So anything that involves water, this is your first layer. And admittedly, like depending on the time of day or what kind of body of water it is, if it's the ocean, maybe it has a little bit of green in it. If it's a inland lake, it might have a little bit more brown in it. You don't know. But anyway, so this is the first layer. And the trick with this layer is to make sure that you have very consistent blending. You have two different types of blues. You have a warm blue in the sky, and you have a warm blue that transitions into a cool blue down the bottom. Alrighty, so now I did mention I'll be powering through this today, and I really wasn't kidding, because we're just going to be going straight into building some mountains at the moment. And if you would like to, paint along and you're thinking, gosh, I can't keep up with the pace, I wouldn't mind being able to stop and start this, press the old pause button. You can subscribe to our newsletter through our website, so the link will be up in the chat. And once you subscribe, we'll send you through the video of this live, as well as a step-by-step blog article with all the little steps outlined with images. So you can do that, which is very nice. But outside of that, it's really lovely to watch artwork, take shape, and also just for you to be able to sort of learn the different techniques of this. Alrighty, so we're going to be adding some more colours onto our palette. The colour we're going to be adding is this beautiful colour called Jade. I love that Jade is included in this 24 tube set because it makes your life so much easier when it comes to mixing the right colour for a very distant Australian hill. Now I say Australian because I know in Australia we have a lot of our eucalyptus trees, and the eucalyptus trees really, I think it's the eucalyptus oil, but it really shows a very bluish kind of a colour. And I know that probably other places in the world, far away, tree-covered mountains, probably have slightly different colours. So I'm going to place a little bit of Jade on my palette. And the colours I'm going to be mixing together for this step is Jade, Ultramarine Blue, and Titanium White. So, there you go. A little bit of Jade here. I think that's the nicest thing about working with a set of colours, especially a large set like the 24 pack, is that it makes your colour mixing really easy because a lot of tricky colours, like our Jade here, are pre-mixed for you. I shouldn't really say pre-mixed because they're not really pre-mixed, they just have pigments that show this colour. Alright, so I have gone back into my large brush, I have washed it, and I've also dried it with a rag. I'm a big fan of using dry or damp brushes, but never wet brushes. That's really important when you're doing acrylics. Well, at least I find it important. Alright, so for this colour, we're putting in Jade, Ultramarine Blue. So as far as the ratio here, let's say 50% Jade, 25% Ultramarine Blue, and 25% white. There you go, mix those all together. And I put in a little bit more white. I want this to be quite light. This is a far away mountain, hill, mountain. They're sort of like not quite big enough to be a mountain and a bit bigger than your standard hill. So, I don't know, a little halfway in between. I'll probably refer to these as both hills and mountains today. So, just be prepared for that. Okay, lovely. So, it's a very, very light bluish green. That's what we're getting here. Right. And I probably need to mix up a little bit more of it because we're actually going to be using a fair amount of it in our picture. Great. So there we go. Colour all mixed up. Lovely, lovely bluish green colour. And with this beautiful jade colour, what we're going to be doing is right across our horizon line is we're going to be building some mountain shapes. I hesitated there because I was like, hills, mountains. I'm just going to now call them mountains, okay? I know in Australia it's not a particularly mountainy place, so you got to, call things mountains when you can. All right, so we're going to start off with a nice line that's just a little bit below the horizon line. There we go. The paint's still a little bit wet and it's mixing in with the colour on top. It's actually a good thing. We want that to be mixed in. It's going to actually help with this section to become a little bit more subtle. Now, across the top of our line, we're going to be creating some little mountainy marks. There we go. Probably should have picked out a brush that wasn't as scraggly today, but it's okay. All right, and for your mountainy shapes, you just want to have different little peaks at slightly different points with different heights. So generally the same kind of shape, but make them a little bit random. So if you're noticing that your little hill mountains are a little bit too organized, they're a little bit too similar, think about ways that you can deregulate them. Put in a little bit of chaos. Make sure that they're not too organized, that the shapes are a little bit different. Okay, once you've got your little mountainy shapes here, we're going to be putting a little bit of a reflection of them in the water. Now the way to do that is to make sure that you've got the exact same colour on your brush, and we're just going to pull down in a vertical direction underneath our mountains. There we go. Now if you want to get really techie with this, you can pull down your reflections to mirror the height and shapes of the mountains. The large, huge, mountains. Mount Everest. It's not in Australia because Australia's too flat. All right, so if you feel that you've got a little bit of a line across, probably don't put your fingers in the paint, across your canvas here, you can sort of blend it out a little bit. You can sort of go in with a bit of a horizontal brush direction to sort of soften them all together a little bit. All right, wonderful. We've got a reflection and we have some mountains. So we can put our big brush in the water and we're going to downsize to a little round brush. I don't know why I hesitated there. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to just be adding in some titanium white to this colour to make up a lighter version of it. And with this lighter version, we're going to tap on some little dots, concentrating on the left edge of our mountains, our very big mountains. There we go, little dots. The other thing with your little dots, overlap them quite densely at the edge, and then as you come in to sort of midway across your mountainy shapes, you can start to let them break up a little bit, so they can help them to disperse a little bit. All right, wonderful. This is a little bit loose, but this is a very, very quick little demo today. So, all right, there we go. More or less, you've got a little bit of detail in your mountains, and we don't need to worry about reflecting that in the water. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build another mountain. For this, do wash your brush with some water and dry it in a rag. Oh, whoops. My new mountain is going to come over here. Let me just pull off some of this. So you've done what I've done, and yeah, that's right. We'll come back to that. I'll show you how to cover little boo-boos in your picture. All right, so the colours we're using now, continuing to use ultramarine blue. We use a lot of ultramarine blue, just so you know. And we're using the ultramarine blue, a little bit of Indian yellow, which let me go and get the Indian yellow out and place this over here. And unseal that. There we go. And if you've just joined in today as well, big welcome. You might be able to tell, but we are painting a river landscape today. And at the moment I'm going into mountain number 2, and I'm using the Jo Sonja range of acrylics as well. So there's the Indian yellow. There it goes. Alright, the other colour, sorry, I was just thinking to myself, like there's another colour, and I'm 99% it's burnt sienna, but it could be brown earth, but it's burnt sienna. So we've got the Indian yellow, ultramarine blue, and then burnt sienna. There's a lot of different colours here, but it's quite important that we have quite a variety. And it would be so much more complicated if we didn't have a lot of these little pre-mixed colours ready to roll. So here comes the burnt sienna. There we go. I think my two, not my two favourite, but more like the two most useful, I think, colours in colour mixing have to be ultramarine and burnt sienna. They're just awesome. Alright, so for this next colour, I'm just going to mix it over the top of this blue area here because it's now dry. So I'm going to take ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of Indian yellow, mix them together, and it's going to create a very dark olive green. That's a little bit on the blue side. And I'm going to lighten it up quite a bit. So I want this colour to be darker than the previous mountain's colour, but still kind of light, right? And also I'm going to make this a little bit warmer. So I'm going to put in a little bit more of the burnt sienna. Alright, marvellous. I'm quite happy with that colour now. It is, actually I'm not happy with it. I'll make it a little bit lighter. So it's sort of like a greenish grey, like a greyish green. I'm sure that there's probably like a pre-mixed colour that's, you can call it that. But this colour right here, that's what we're using. Okay, so for our next little mountain, we're going to start off with a few little dashes. So we're going to place the first dash just a little bit below the horizon line and our previous mountains. And then we're going to stagger it. So we're going to have another mountain, another sort of dash, that's going to be a mountain, another one. So we're going to have about 3 little staggered lines. Then on the top of these, we're going to paint in a nice big mountain shape that extends up into the sky. And I'm just going to tidy up that edge a little bit because that was a little bit of a crazy edge. And now we're going to fill in this whole section, including, we're going to make some little sort of points coming up from those little lines that we had put in. Probably should have mixed in more colour. Alright, so we've blocked in a bit of a mountainy shape here. That's sort of connected to those little lines that we've placed in. There we go, mountain number 2. And for this, we're also going to be reflecting that colour down into the water. And I need to quickly mix up some more because I did not mix up enough. So here I go. Now, it's incredibly important that when you reflect something in water, the first step is always, it needs to be vertical. The brush marks have to be vertical. It'll all make sense in a little bit, but for now, just think it needs to be vertical. And look, the length, more or less, can be about the height of the object that you're reflecting. Yeah, okay, I think that's pretty good. Wonderful. Now, for this, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be creating a highlight colour again. And for this highlight colour, I'm going to go to the colour we just have here. And we're going to add in some more white. Ooh, that white just nicked some Phthalo Blue. So I'll get out some more titanium white. Alrighty, so I'll just wash my brush clean of that pesky Phthalo Blue. So we're going to take a little bit of Indian yellow and a little bit of titanium white into that bluish colour that we've just been using, that bluish grey green colour, all the colours in one. And you should end up with a colour that's, well, kind of like this. It's like a yellowy, greenish grey. Now I'm just saying all the colours in one word. All right, and we're going to be doing a similar technique to what we've done with the previous mountain. So we're going to be creating little dots that overlap and really concentrate on the left edge, and then sort of start to dissipate a little bit as they get into the rest of the mountain. There we go. And because we have these little dashes that we place down, you can actually start a few of these little dots from your little steps that you've placed in. So off I go, la-di-da, da-da-da-da. Which, yeah, and I think with this as well, the lovely thing about these Jo Sonja colours is that they're very fluid, so they actually move and they blend around really nicely. And they do dry with a nice matte finish. And it's actually something that I realised I didn't mention at the beginning of the class, but is pretty important. This lovely artwork is actually on the back of the new packaging. So you can actually see the little painting that we're doing today on the back of the 24 set tube. So when you go into the art store and you want to go and pick up a nice set, you can say, oh, I know how to paint that. And yeah, this lovely this is actually from a lookout that's looking down near Barara Waters. So it's actually quite local to anybody who is in Sydney and joining our class today, or anybody who might be in the Ku-ring-gai area or Hornsey area. That's me today. So I'm washing my brush now and I'm going to dry it and not drip paint water onto my canvas like I did for the previous. All right, and continuing on here, we are going to mix up a slightly darker mountain colour, and this mountain colour here is going to be more like a bluey grey sort of a colour. So we're going to use a lot of ultramarine blue this time. I might mix it down here, and a bit of burnt sienna. I'm going to mix those two together, and it's going to give like a very dark colour, admittedly. If you ever want to know how to mix black, this is just, I guess, some paint trivia here. To mix black, it's actually burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. It's very, very cool. There are a few ways to mix black, though. I will also say that. Alright, so once you've mixed in the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna in about equal parts, we're going to take a little bit of Indian yellow and just a little touch of white, just a little bit. And you should have a very, very dark, almost khaki kind of colour, but a very like bluish khaki colour. Again, here I am putting all the colours in one description. Unless somebody's come through and labelled this colour, which I'm sure that somebody does, the amount of patents there are on colour, it's just ridiculous. Alright, so with this dark colour, let's create another line. This time, this line is going to be just a little bit lower than the previous mountain, right? So it's almost like we're staggering our heights here. We have very high, a little bit lower, and now this one could probably be about this height, right? So let's go ahead and put in a nice line. There we go. And as far as the sort of the length of the line, it shouldn't be more than about a third, right? Okay, so let's put that there. And now with this one, we're going to be creating another mountain, and this time we actually are going to be expanding it up into the sky too. So it's actually going to be sort of a bit of a, let's just start. I'm going to start up in the sky. Let's kind of stagger down with a little bit of a nose to it. There we go. Lovely. And we're just going to fill that whole thing in, and even if it picks up a little bit of the colour that's underneath, because we are sort of powering through today in a wet on wet kind of approach, it's actually completely okay. In fact, I love painting wet on wet because I find that it's really easy to create a high sense of colour harmony between sections if everything is wet. Okay, lovely. Got mountain number 3. This is our last mountain today. And like all of our other mountains, we need to make sure that we have a little bit of reflection underneath. So, going to be pulling all that colour down. Another little trick when you're reflecting is you can even start off with like heavy pressure, light pressure. So it's like you're bringing in little ticks. But that whole section there is going to be nice and dark now, because, you know, you've got nice shading there. The sun here is definitely on the left side of the picture. So that's why this lovely little mountain is so dark and in shadow. And wonderful. So I'm going to just dry my paintbrush now. And with that mountain colour, we're going to add in a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow. Wow, that's actually quite light. I think I might have accidentally put in a little bit too much white. So I'm going to go backwards by putting in a bit of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. That's a better colour. And I might make it a little bit more yellow. Because this colour is like the tops of the gum trees. And now the reason why all of these colours are so blue is that the more air there is between your eye and the thing that you're looking at, the more a blue colour is reflected. Or I should rephrase that, the more the colour of the sky is reflected, or sort of in the thing that you're painting. Anyways, so across the top edge here, focusing again on the left side, we're going to be creating a little bit of a tappety little pattern. And it's okay if the highlights here are a little bit subtle, because this mountain, this hill, this lovely little land mass is in shadow, so it shouldn't have too much of the highlight on it. And if you want to get a little bit tricky and put some little gum tree things, I'll show you a little trick. Across the top edge, you can put a few little light little dots that kind of break free, and that can give a little texture like, oh, there's little gum trees over in the distance there. Anyway, but with this, it's actually not a class about details, so let's continue on. Can't believe that we're powering through today. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a little bit of interest into our water, and we're going to be putting in some nice little ripples. Now for this, something that I've just sprung on you by the way, we're using some Jo Sonja Flow Medium. Now the reason why we're using the Flow Medium is to increase the transparency of our colour, and it also does help flow, so it does help our colour flow a little bit. So what we'll be doing is using our little brush, a little round brush, and I'm going to be drying that in my rag, washing and drying. And let's place out a little bit of the Flow Medium on our palette. I'm just going to place it on the side there. And, you know, I washed that brush and then I just laid it on my palette and it just got some colour back in it. So, washing it again. Alright, so we'll take some titanium white, plain titanium white, nothing else in there, and Flow Medium. There's a little bit of blue that's managed to sneak in there, and let's just roll with it. Now, as far as the ratio here, we want it to be about 2 parts Flow Medium, 1 part titanium white. So this stuff is going to be really transparent, and that's pretty much exactly what we want here. Okay, so when picking up the colour, I'm just going to twist my paintbrush in the mix. That's going to help give a nice point to it. And we are going to start to build up some ripples. So for ripples are just little dashes, little horizontal lines that sort of overlap and all the rest. There we go, little ripples. Now it's very important to start down the bottom, because down the bottom you can afford to be a little bit heavier handed. Now you might wonder what that little spot right in the middle is there. Well, that spot is where I dropped water on my canvas, which is very naughty, and I will be going back at some point, probably at the end of the session, and fixing that up. Now I'm using my paintbrush with a very light pressure now, and I'm holding it about 90 degrees 90 degrees right angle to my canvas, and I'm just placing in lots of these little overlapping lines. They come out quite wide down the bottom, but as I'm coming higher up, I'm just going to be concentrating them. I'm going to cover that little spot with lots of them. Maybe I'll put a little boat there later. That's a good idea. Little boat, cover all the sins that I have. Alright, so we're going to be concentrating these ripples now in the center of the water, and as they get further away, they're going to become less. The shapes are going to be shorter, and the marks are going to be thinner, which means you need to have a really, really, really steady little hand here. I say that as I put a diagonal ripple in there. And you don't need many far away, just a little bit to give a little bit of that texture of the water. Alright, There we go. And I'm sort of actually buffing out those far away ones to make them seem softer. So they're just sort of giving that little bit of that feeling of light catching on the top of the river. This, by the way, is the Hawkesbury River. For anybody who's joining from Sydney today, this is our lovely little Hawkesbury River. Well, it's not really ours. It's not really in Sydney, is it? It's sort of on the top edge of Sydney. Even then, I don't think that's correct. You might think what's going on there. So I am actually coming through and sort of actually going over these little dashes, and I'm softening them out. So you can see the way that they're now becoming quite subtle, quite soft. La-di-da-di-da. I don't know why I sing, but it's not really singing. But anyways, so I'm softening out all those ripples, and it's bringing in a nice water texture. So the real trick with creating the illusion of water is to make sure that you start off with a blend of the sky, vertical reflections of whatever's above, and then cut across the top with a nice transparent ripple. Ta-da! You could probably leave the painting like that, but we've got 15 minutes to go today, so we're going to be placing in some gum trees. So for the gum trees, we are going to use a new colour. Again, we're using the 24 set of the Jo Sonjas. Now this is a brand new set that's just about to launch in Australia, but if you're tuning in from another part of the world and you think, why is it only you Australians that get this set? Why can't I have some? Well, you can create this artwork with the same colours, so there will be a list of colours used uploaded as well. So, brown earth, out it goes. There we go, lovely little blob. And we're going to take the same little round brush that we've been using. I love to use just 2 brushes when I paint. It's a nice way, especially if you're starting to learn how to paint, to not have to worry about having, 1,000 brushes. So I've dried my brush and I have washed and dried, my apologies, and I'm just going to use plain brown earth, nothing added to it at all. And because the Jo Sonja is quite a fluid paint, it's excellent for little details because it flows really nicely. Alrighty, let's go with some gum trees. So now I know in my demo I had gum trees sort of to the left here, but you know what? I'll just do it to the left. I was considering maybe putting some to the right as well. I don't know, let's just go left. And I mean, when you're doing this at home, you can put gum trees wherever you like. They can be coming from the top right side, left side, wherever you like. Okay, so with the gum trees, I'm going to be starting with quite a heavy pressure from the side of the canvas. I make a bit of a curved little line that extends out into my landscape. And the thing about gum trees is that they fork and they have really kind of bent, gnarly kind of a, yeah, I just use gnarly as a expression here. Little branches. And with the branches, the thickest part of the branch is always the part that is at the tip of the branch. And if you want to make that feel really natural, take a branch that goes in a really odd direction, like this one, sort of curves underneath. Little crazy freedom fighter branch, this one, doing its own thing, living its best anarchy life. And I might place another little branch up here, and it's going to fork. So all of your branches should fork, and the more little breaks that they have, the more little areas of separation that they get, the better, actually. So now I'm just going to go ahead and place in some little tiddly branches. Branches everywhere, so many branches. There we go. And I am reapplying with paint quite regularly here, and I am using a very light pressure. So I guess the trick with fine details is light pressure, and making sure that you're using, if you're using a round brush, to roll the brush in the paint as you pick it up. All right. The next colour we're using is this beautiful colour called Bisque. And I think of Bisque, I feel like, when you, well, for anybody here who does any ceramics, you'll know you've got your Bisque firing. And I feel like that's exactly the colour of this. Like it's a real kind of ceramic, almost a clay kind of colour. Very, very pretty. So let's place out our Bisque colour. And now if you've just joined into this session and you think, oh, this looks like fun, I'd like to follow along and pause and, continue to play, but have the whole video from the start, you can subscribe to Chroma's newsletter. And the link is in the comments. And once you subscribe to the newsletter, you will be able to access this video in full, as well as the little step-by-step with images attached, a little blog article of it. All right, so you might think, that's really lovely, Teresa, but what are you doing now? And I am coming around the left side of well, not all, but most of my little branches, a little highlight that's just catching on the little left side. If you want it to feel quite sort of organic, have little breaks, but you want this to be quite, oh, that's a bit of a large one, but you want this to be quite fine, just sort of catching on the little side parts and bits and pieces. Yeah, and once you've done that, we can go in to some leaves. Sorry, you might think, oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm not painting along at the moment because you're going so fast. And I am powering through this because I think, you know what, we've got an hour of power today and I want to get as much landscape painting there. And the thing with this as well is that today you can watch the painting unfold and you think, gosh, that's cool. But yeah, do subscribe so you actually get to use this video again. And whenever I go into a new step, you can press pause. And now if you do have any questions about what I'm doing today, thinking, wow, that's cool. How did you do that again? Or, maybe you've got some other paint questions. Just ask them in the comments section. And, we are live today, so you can answer all your questions right away. Now the colors I'm placing out here is a mixture of ultramarine blue and phthalo green. So there's a little phthalo green there. And we are going to mix those two together. And it's going to create a really nice bluish green, which is very nice, very like eucalyptus-y green. And this is for our little gum leaves. Now, if you think, okay, I don't mind that color, but I prefer it maybe to be a little bit more earthy, you can actually put a little bit of the brown into it. So you put a little bit of brown in there, it becomes a little bit more muted, a little bit more earthy. But if you leave it just the ultramarine blue and the phthalo green, it's quite bright. Okay, so now we're going to be building some leaves. And leaves, we're just going to be putting on little dashes. I like to think of gum leaves like little overlapping umbrella shapes. And they're always in little groups. It's never like a consistent thing, and they're like these little umbrella groups that just sit on the edge of the little edge of the branches, the end of the branches. Oh, goodness me. It's funny, I think with when you're painting or drawing or doing anything creative, I have a theory, you're using your right side of your brain, but then your left side of your brain is the one that's responsible for language. So I often find if I'm really concentrating on what I'm creating, I struggle to talk. So you might think to yourself, well, you haven't been quiet this whole time. You mustn't be really concentrating. And I'll tell you a little secret. I've painted this picture a few times, so I can talk while I do it and not sort of get lost. But if yes, anyways, so I'm building up lots and lots of little dashes, and they can be little curved dashes. You want to have a little bit more of those nice eucalyptus-y gum tree sort of a feelings to them. They're really focusing on the edges of the tree. I'm just placing in some little floating ones as well that I might reconnect with some branches. It's interesting when you start to paint a tree, because you'll start with like I like to say like constructional branches. It's like the really important ones that sit in the middle of your tree, really give the main sense of form. Yeah, I'm glad I put that other one in there. And then you have your your little accessory ones. All right, so I'm just going to add in a bit of yellow into that color, and with that yellow, I'm just going to tap on a little bit of that light yellow on the left side of some of my leaves. Being quite heavy-handed here, but that's all right. And the last little highlight here, we're going to take some plain white, almost plain white, and yellow, so it's going to be quite light. And I'm just going to put on just a little bit of highlight through those leaves now. It's quite loose, so it just gives you the little sort of touch of light there. Definitely doesn't have to be too, realistic, but we just want to have a nice few little bits of colour in there. Wonderful. And my dears, that is a wrap. We have now finished our lovely river landscape using our Jo Sonja acrylics. Now, for anybody who's just sort of chimed in, you're thinking, oh, damn, I just sort of missed the bulk of that. So this little step-by-step is actually available on sort of as part of our newsletter subscription. So you can head to our website and subscribe to our newsletter, and you can get the video of this class so you can follow along and pause it. You also have a blog article page that's attached as well, and that actually has step-by-step instructions and images to follow as well. So I hope that you enjoyed this session today. I'm very sort of happy to be able to share this with you because painting water, Australian landscapes, all that sort of stuff is really it's a thing that I love the most as far as my own art practice goes. And the sort of materials I was using today was this beautiful Jo Sonja 24 tube set. So this is a new set that's just about to hit all of our Australian art stores, which is very exciting, especially because it's Australian owned and made. Very cool. It's actually made around the corner from my studio, which is really awesome. And the artwork that we're doing today is a simplified version of this artwork that I did on the back here. So there you go. I hope you've had fun. I hope you're feeling inspired and you're ready to get into a nice creative weekend, which is wonderful. And yeah, it was my pleasure to share this with you, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful time. So see you all later. Bye.